Hello everyone, friends. So, breathing. It is one of the most important processes that happen to a person. Breathing is an important element. It is an important key. We cannot be separate from breathing. Unfortunately, people do not give it proper attention and do not want to draw a simple parallel that breathing greatly reflects on the mental state. A person in a certain state breathes exactly like this. Try running, for example, and keep your breathing calm. No, it won't work. In other words, breathing is connected to our mental component one way or another. In other words, the way a person breathes largely determines their state. And of course, for many who want to start working on themselves, and in general, in principle, no matter what, breathing remains an important and unique process to see the connection that your consciousness can influence your state. So friends, breathing, there are lungs. It seems like everyone knows about this. But what do you actually know about how the lungs are structured? What exactly happens? It may be a revelation for you to learn that the process of combustion actually takes place in the lungs. That is, the lungs produce a certain chemical reaction that generates heat. That is the main mechanism of warming our body, since our body is at a higher temperature than the surrounding environment. Heat is not given by the heart, as is commonly believed that the heart is fire, meaning it warms and heats. No, it actually warms the lungs. In the lungs, when a person inhales to take in exactly what the body needs, a certain reaction occurs that is very similar in its properties to combustion. That is, a large amount of heat is released. There is a practice called Tummo Yoga. It involves specific exercises, breathing exercises, through which you learn to control internal heat. This is a serious science mastered by experts. In this science, there are not many people who are truly dedicated, who really understand what to do, how it is done, and what the secret of diaphragmatic breathing is, because it involves not only the diaphragm, but also certain internal, one might say, alchemical mechanisms that are hidden under a veil of secrecy, 7 seals, and so on. That is, it is not so easy to find this information, to read about which mantras to chant, which practices and techniques to do in order to ignite the inner fire. But then you need to understand that when you kindle a fire, you do it for a reason. That is, certain mechanisms, certain energies in our body are better left untouched before their time. Once activated, you might not be able to stop the process of this reaction. You might not be able to somehow extinguish this process. This can happen if the body is not ready. Yes, the belly. The same goes for Kundalini energy. If the channels are not cleansed, if the fine work there is not adjusted, at least the microcosmic orbit and others, this energy will simply break a person, just destroy them. But let's get back to breathing. It's important to understand that you have to start somewhere, you have to experiment. First of all, I will show you deep diaphragmatic breathing, a kind of rhythmic yoga breathing. Of course, I would refer you to the work on the science of breathing by Indian yogis, but since people are not inclined to read, I will show a few exercises here. Specifically, I will talk about rhythmic yoga breathing. These techniques truly provide a sense of a deeply sacred rhythm, an inner pulsation, directing attention to this rhythm and the sensation within one's body. It turns out that we are approaching the point where it becomes clear that this part of me is breathing, so to speak, and this part is not. Here, I feel this pulsation, but there, I don't feel it. The occipital zones, sacrum, lumbar, and cervical spine areas, legs, feet, ankles. These are the classic places where a person experiences certain distortions and disruptions because there is no proper breathing. That is, with breathing, this feeling of wholeness in these moments is refracted, deep yogic breathing. In other words, a person breathes shallowly in the usual sense. Each of us, especially when there are many social processes and so on, does not pay attention to our breathing, does not watch our body or how we are actually breathing. Breathing most often goes like this. Throughout the day, a person takes very short breaths, slightly raising their shoulders, and very short exhales. So it's like this. Essentially, you are, in essence, using at best 10–15% of your lung capacity. The rest is all constrained by the psyche. Numerous resentments, some different feelings of guilt, some other kinds of insecurities, and a bit of anger here and there. That is, in general, a person typically cannot activate these areas because they are forbidden in society. And by definitely conveying himself in a manner through that image, that mask he puts on each and every single day to be the person that society wants to see in order to fit into the surrounding world, then you can't use any. You can't engage sexuality. You can't engage deep breathing. Because if a person really breathes deeply, it will activate their inner beast. It will activate some mechanisms of the endocrine system, which will sort of inject a certain pleasure from breathing and from life, because this should not be allowed. From childhood, they say, don't look here, don't touch that, this is not allowed. All of this is under certain taboos, some kind of prohibition. And each of us, in one way or another, often ends up breathing very shallowly in our daily lives. You observe your breath without interfering or controlling it. You allow your body to breathe, then it starts to breathe deeper and deeper. But for the body to become aware of the breathing itself, it takes about 3 months of practice, starting with deep yogic breathing. That is, unlike shallow breathing, deep breathing involves drawing air into the abdomen, which activates the lower part of the lungs, causing them to press on the diaphragm, and the abdomen moves forward and to the sides. Ideally, you should feel that the expansion goes not only forward and to the sides, but also backward. That is, you kind of expand in all directions at the bottom because the volume of the lungs starts to press. To avoid leaving these spheres usually in the kidneys, you also need to feel that the breath goes backward. That is, you draw in the abdomen. Relax your abdomen, inhale, and fill your belly. Then start expanding your chest and draw air into your chest. And then, after filling your abdomen and chest overflowing, you also lift your shoulders. This is a deep, full yogic breath. Accordingly, exhalation can take 2 forms. You can drop your shoulders, release the volume in your chest, and exhale what is in your abdomen. Or you can do the opposite. Start with the abdomen, then the chest, and then lower the shoulders. I recommend doing the reverse exhalation to how you inhale. That is, if you first filled your abdomen, then your chest, and then your shoulders, it makes sense to release your shoulders, chest, and if you were drawing air first into your chest, shoulders, and then also your abdomen, this is already another type of breathing, and actually you shouldn't start with it. But if you take a different approach to inhaling, then the exhalation will also be different. It makes sense, for example, to practice this while walking. So you take 4 steps, and during these 4 steps, you inhale. You count simultaneously. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Over time, you might immediately feel that it is very easy. You can inhale for 6 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If this is easy for you, do 8. 8 steps for the inhale, 8 steps for the exhale. A very important point I want to tell you right away: to be in a normal, balanced mental state, it is very important to make the exhalation exactly the same as the inhalation. That means you don't need to make them different, like 8 steps for inhalation and 4 steps for exhalation. That would be a violation. There are certain practices where breathing is uneven, but these are special practices for specific kinds of states. You need to do them next to a master, under their supervision. Don't do it on your own, trust me. You need to start by doing simple and correct things first. So let me show you, okay? So for 4 counts inward, I inhaled, and for 4 counts, I exhaled once again. Quite simple, but in fact, the simplicity of these exercises only increases their value. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's pointless. In fact, it has a very significant purpose. Because when you start doing full lung ventilation, those areas that haven't been breathing accumulate stale carbon dioxide, and certain ventilation starts to occur less there. And in these areas, it's like these places are prone to the spread of certain bacteria. That is, some carbonic acids, some resins, some toxins accumulate there. And there, a very moist and pleasant environment is created for the growth of certain bacteria. And all this other nastiness, because there's no ventilation, no light, it's cramped, and there are already those foreign microelements they need, and they start creating their own little swamp there. To ensure there is no debris in your lungs, you need to periodically practice full yogic breathing, which helps. It's especially good to do this in nature. Find a clean and pleasant spot. Of course, it's difficult in big cities, but nowadays there are air ionizers and other devices that actually do a very good and quality job of the task set before them. In the apartment, if you have some nice green plants, maybe some small palm trees growing at home, and a good air ionizer, you are somehow working to create that proper personal microclimate in your apartment. Well, accordingly, I think you can sit down and do full yogic breathing, without any hesitation, without thinking about what you're breathing. If it's harder, well, then it's better to go out of town. It's better to go somewhere with a nice green area where you can breathe clean, fresh air, but it's even better to live where there's always good, clean air, and you can confidently practice full yogic breathing. Every morning, every evening, at sunset, at sunrise, when, so to speak, Castaneda mentioned, the crack between worlds, where it's neither light nor dark, this semi-transition. In these moments, you breathe deeply, as if ventilating your lungs to ensure the proper processes occur. In one of the yoga books, I read an interesting idea that a person's life is actually a certain number of breaths in and out. And there was an idea presented that, in fact, if you can extend your breath, you extend your life. So that was an interesting idea proposed by someone. It's one thing to inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and in 15 seconds you've done 10 breaths. But on the other hand, if you took 1 breath in and out in those same 15 seconds, you have effectively extended your life. In those 15 breaths that a person takes in 15 seconds, which is around 1/4 of a minute, you can experience much more time at certain times as you breathe. A very interesting idea, and in its own way, it makes sense to draw a parallel here. Goodbye, everyone.